From the St. Francis Yacht Club in San Francisco, this is the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, hosted by Ron Young.
Welcome to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. I am so happy to see that you are here for such a fantastic presentation all about electric boats. I am Kathy Trafton. I'm the Vice Chair of the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon Committee. Many of you know Ron Young. He is our chair, and he is out racing in Santa Barbara. He said around Santa Cruz Island down to San Diego. I know for a fact right now he is defected. He is in the Santa Barbara Yacht Club having lunch. But yeah. So anyway, I'm very excited. We have a tight program today. We have three marvelous speakers, so I will give you the briefest of introductions. And what I learned is, of course, electric boats, electric cars, electric trains, it all sounds so very new and modern, but it's not. I was snuffling around the internet, and it turns out an early electric boat was developed by an inventor from Germany. And in 1839, it was successfully demonstrated for Emperor Nicholas I of Russia. So there is a long history of electrified vehicles, and of course, electric cars were a thing early in the 20th century. And then, of course, the internal combustion engines became dominant. So we're trying to bring back more electric. So we have three speakers. Each one will give us just a 5-minute presentation, and then we'll do a 15-minute Q&A. And then we all have a chance to go down to our guest dock, where we can see some boats that have been retrofitted, as well as some new electric boats. We have representatives today from three companies, and one of them retrofits some of the old boats. And also we have some high-tech new companies, sort of young Silicon Valley titans of industry starting up the electric boat companies, creating new boats. So I'm so thrilled you are here to share in the fun. I'd like to introduce our speakers. First, Sam from Navier.
Great, welcome everybody. So I'll dive in a little bit on a high-level overview, first on electrification as well as hydrofoils before we dive into Navier specifically. So the future is electric. It's happened on the road, it's happened in the air, and it's happening on the water. The problem with happening on the water is that boats are inherently very inefficient. So half the world's population lives in near coastal cities. The world was built around the water. It used to be the main form of transportation, and the car came along and it became about 10 to 15 times cheaper to move on the car versus on the water. So what we have really done is developed a hydrofoil boat that is more efficient and smooth and doesn't look like this. So this is typically what an experience on the bay looks like today. So it's uncomfortable, it's loud, it's noisy, and it's really expensive, as well as really bad for the environment, because you're burning about 1, maybe 2 miles per gallon in a roughly 30-foot size boat like this one, as opposed to on a hydrofoil boat, it's smooth, quiet, and you're fully up above the water. So a traditional planing hole looks like this on the left side, where you can see the bottom of the boat, the hull of the boat, the shape of the hull actually creates a stability and provides a stability. When you remove the boat from the water and you're just on foils, the stability, the control surfaces come from the foils. So we've used airplane control surfaces. So we have 3 foils and 3 ailerons on our boat, and those ailerons are what's able to give the boat stability when you're up on foil. The hull is no longer touching the water. It's about 4 feet out of the water on our boat. And we have each of the ailerons move at 50 times per second. And you can see here, everybody likes to look to numbers. So about $5 is your cost per mile in a traditional 30-foot boat. About 50 cents is your cost per mile in a boat like ours. How does all this work? So airplanes on the left side, you see that picture. It's called the canard configuration airplane, where you have the elevator in the front. And so we work pretty much the same, where you have lift off the front foil, you have drag off of that foil, creating the resistance to create Bernoulli's principle. So you have the air, water in this case, moving faster over the wing than under the wing. And then you have thrust coming from the rear. You have 2 motors on the back. You notice everything on our boat is redundant. So we have 2 of everything. There's no single point of failure on the boat. I can unplug any single wire on the boat that I want, and the boat will still foil. You have 2 motors, 3 ailerons, 2 controllers, 2 batteries. There's not a single system on the boat that is a single point of failure. And for us, that's really important if you're in the air and you're something goes wrong, you need to be able to land the airplane. In a car, it's less important. You can pull over to the side of the road. On the water, if you lose propulsion, if you are not able to get home, wind, waves, push you into the rocks, drown, it really can be a very dire situation quite quickly. So a gloss of this is a simulator, shows all the different aeronautical simulations that we're able to do. So our whole premise of the company is, if for the same cost, speed, and convenience as land-borne option, if you could build something on the water and be able to move on the water, all of a sudden, why not, but let's do it. The waterway should no longer be a barrier, it should be a highway. So what we've done is we've built the N30, we call it, which is a 30-foot all-electric hydrofoil boat. And here's a little video, little teaser video on the bay. So it's the world's longest range electric boat. It gets 4 feet above the water. You can see we're going through some big waves from a boat over here. It does 30-degree banking turns like an airplane would. It is completely quiet. It fits somewhere between 6 to 10 people, depending on how you have it outfitted. Heat, air conditioning, fully enclosed cabin, bathroom, fast charges in 45 minutes, slow charges off a charger in 6 to 8 hours, and it is really quite an easy boat in order to operate. One of the big things we have is a joystick docking system as well, so the boat can move side to side, and you'll be able to see this on the dock as well as rotate in place. The big question that we get with hydrofoils is rough seas. So how does this boat operate in rough seas? So the answer to that question is that we went out, this is about 2 years ago, the roughest storm San Francisco had. It took out Pier 1.5, which is still unfortunate, and took out many trees and power around. So we, like any good company, took out the boat that day. It was about 50 to 60 mile per hour winds. We're the only boat on the bay, 3 to 5 foot chop. It's a little deceiving how rough it actually is, but the boat, for perspective, is 4 feet out of the water here. So those rollers are roughly 4 to 6 feet in size. So as you can see, the boat is up above the water surface, smooth, stable. You can run, you can jump. The boat actually updates at 50 times per second, so you can run around the boat and literally jump up and down, and the boat will still stay stable on rails. So just to wrap it up here, we're just getting started. We're building bigger boats. We're building faster boats. We're building boats that can foil in further sea states. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about everybody else and answering questions.
Beautiful. Hello, everyone. I'm Veronica, coming here with you from Candela, which is another electric hydrofoiling boat company. I'm going to tag team a little bit here off of Sam. He kind of gave you the background of how hydrofoils work and why that's a good answer to the electric boat problem. This is another version of that solution. So Candela is a fully electric hydrofoil boat company. We manufacture, engineer, and design hydrofoil boats. This is our main leisure model. It's a 28-foot. It does 57 nautical miles at 22 knots, really looking at trying to maintain the speed with an electric vessel while giving you a more comfortable experience and all of that. So Candela's the world's first electric hydrofoil. We're based in Stockholm originally, but we've got some boats here in the US. So we started in 2014 really with the idea of how do you build a more efficient boat. The story that we always like to tell is that the founder lives in the Swedish archipelago and takes his kids out to ice cream at the fuel dock and kind of realized that for the 20-minute trip he was spending $50 in fuel and was like, there's got to be a better way to get a $5 ice cream. So here comes the Candela. So in 2019, we produced our first model. We did about 32 of them worldwide. That's the C7 that you see here up on the screen. A little bit of a different kind of configuration. And then we moved on to the C8, which is what we currently produce now. In 2022, we launched our Pro Series as well, which is more looking towards commercial transit. And then we got that first commercial boat in the water, which is a 40-foot catamaran that seats just under 30 passengers. So we're really looking also at replacing ferry systems and kind of going towards electric fleets. So our foil system similarly works in physics and everything to Sam's and Navier's, but is a little bit of a different configuration. We've got a pie foil in the front here, which is one big long foil across the front of the boat. It's kind of midway. And that's where most of your adjustments are happening. That's where most of your lift is happening. So these foils make about 100 adjustments a second. This is our aft foil and sea pod motor. So this is the propulsion motor of the boat. It's a fully electric dual motor with contra-rotating props. All direct drive. There's no oil, no coolant, nothing like that. It's fully submerged beneath the surface. So it's one of the quietest motors you're going to get out there. We've got lots of features on the boat. This is kind of going into some of that, looking at retraction modes, and really kind of wanting to maintain the usability of something like this. You know, a lot of people have questions about switching to electric, and one of them is it going to be more annoying to use? Am I going to have to trailer it differently? Things like that. And our answer to all of those is no. It's actually going to be a lot simpler. So you can kind of see these are the two main boats that are in production right now. We've got our C8 there, which is our leisure and recreational model, and then our Pro Series model here called the P12. This is a little video that'll show you kind of both of those flying side by side in Sweden. So you've got both running about, the C8's about 3 feet above the water, and you can go up to 30 knots. So mostly based in Sweden, we do almost everything in-house, which allows us to really play with kind of our own production and constantly, you know, make things better and better. These boats are basically on a hotspot, so it's a really big mix between a physical product and also a sort of software product. There's a lot of technology that goes into all of this. But it allows us to, you know, you can basically give this boat to anyone and they're going to be able to drive it and have a good experience out on the water. So yeah, basically this is kind of some of our rough seas that we're looking at. You know, it's a good solve. One of the things we like to say is that, you know, hydrofoils don't have to be electric, but electric boats to some degree have to be hydrofoils. It's one of the few sort of solves if you want to maintain speed and range. So we've built this boat really with efficiency in mind, overarching everything else. And we're hoping that, you know, as we see more and more adoption throughout the entire world, we've got about 80 of these boats worldwide, focused largely in Europe, here in the US, and then also in the Middle East and Asia. But we'll hopefully get to see kind of that speeding up that transition to a fossil fuel-free waterway. So while hydrofoils are a great example of how to solve the electric problem, we'll have Mike come up and he can give you some other ideas of how to solve the electric problem.
Thank you. My name is Mike Gunning, and I'm with Electric Yacht. We're a U.S. company. We build, manufacture, engineer all of our systems in Minnesota. We call it the sailing capital of America. Our vision, this is interesting, we've been building these things for about 12 years, and we finally decided we had to have a vision. Our vision is to lead the North American market in providing electric sailboat propulsion. Our mission is to provide a marine electric system that can be installed by clients, boatyards, shipwrights. It can be done easily and fully warranted and safely. This is the problem, guys. We've got approximately 88,000 sailboats in North America. And you may have an idea of what percentage of those actually physically have working engines. But our estimate is between 15 and 18% do not have working motors. They do not leave the dock. They're taking up our waterways. They're a source of pollution. And they're not really sailboats anymore if they don't leave the dock. They're docks. So these boats were built in the 1970s through 2000. Since then, the U.S. manufacturing base has basically gone away. We build about 300 sailboats greater than 30 foot a year in the United States. Now, we used to make that a month down in Southern California. The market for new boat construction now is in Europe, in Vietnam, and elsewhere. Why does electric make sense? Well, I'm not sure if you saw the motor in the back of the room. That little electric motor is equivalent of about a 20 horsepower diesel engine, weighs about 75 pounds. And today, with a modest battery pack that would fit in a 40-year-old boat, you can go ahead and push that boat for 20 to 30 nautical miles at cruising speeds. And you can go ahead and have a safe motoring experience, and you can do that for manufacturing costs of about $8,000 for the product, batteries and motors. And that addresses an issue because you're not going to replace motors in boats when the motors cost more than the value of the boat. You're not going to put diesels into old boats when you can't find a diesel mechanic. The biggest issue with electric boats is range for all systems. What you've just heard from the foiling boat market, that's a marvelous technology that will now allow powerboats to have reasonable range. But all the old powerboats out there within time are going to be facing a problem. And sometimes this is a legislative problem. Sometimes the state of California can do things that may not be technically possible for the marketplace to address. And they've done that a number of times. Prime example is that right now we have a ferry that is basically a national treasure down in Balboa Island. It's now outlawed. It cannot run in its current configuration after December 31, 2025. So they put together a proposal. It's going to cost $9 million to repower that with electric, the first one. So the state of California is going to give them $9 million to repower that boat. That's an impractical way of doing business. The practical way of doing business is to have a quality product that allows the sailor, not the powerboater, but the sailor, to go ahead and repower their boat and take it into the future, reasonably and safely. And that's our focus. Perspective-wise, we've done about 1,200 boats. We started about 12 years ago. Boats mostly are in North America. Mostly they're between 30 foot and 40 foot. Our largest boat that we did was a 150-foot powerboat. Actually, it's a trimaran, and we don't power it. We're not the main power. There's a couple of manned 2,000 horsepower diesels driving it. But when that boat comes into a marina or harbor, the diesels go off, drop down to 30 kilowatt motors, and it propels around the harbor under electric. The oldest boat we've done is about 102 years old. It's an Atlantic cat boat. We're right now in production. We built a motor for a fairly famous boat, Hotspur. Al Loomis's boat is being rebuilt, and it will be in the water hopefully by the end of this summer. And it will have a 20 kilowatt electric motor, much like you see over there in the corner. So Electric Yacht is dedicated to addressing the marketplace where there's 88,000 boats out there filling up the docks that need to be repowered safely and economically. Thank you.
One, two, three. Hello. This is absolutely fascinating. This is, what are the biggest barriers to scaling this up and getting, more electric motors in these boats?
Yeah.
Sam.
Sam,
Veronica.
if you want to start, whoever,
Sure.
yeah, go for it.
I think the biggest barrier right now is, and this is working? Can you people hear me?
Just, yeah, really close to it.
I think that one of the biggest barriers is actually education. So many people are not comfortable with electric. There's range anxiety with electric cars, and I think the same thing happens with boats. And the biggest thing is people don't understand it's actually a lot easier to charge your boat than it is to fill up your boat with gas. Here in the Bay Area, for example, there's gas in Sausalito, there's gas in Gas Cove over here, which is closing, unfortunately, in 2 years. And then you have to go all the way down to Alameda or even further south. So between the hours of 9 to 5, you have to boat between 20 to 30 minutes to get gas oftentimes, when every single slip and every single marina is effectively a level 2 charger. And there's fast chargers that are getting installed in marinas around the world, in addition to the Bay Area. So I think people need to understand that it's easier to fill up your boat with electricity, as well as cheaper, than it is to be able to fill up your boat with gas. And so I think that's the biggest thing holding people back is the comfort level with electricity being their main power source. And the question I get asked all the time is, what happens when you run out of electricity?
Range anxiety.
And I always respond, what happens when you run out of gas in your boat? You watch your gas gauge the same way you watch your electricity level. It's really no different.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, just as Sam was saying, like that electric factor is a big part of it. And we've seen on the car side, people slowly start to accept that and get more comfortable with it. But like Sam was saying, there's a lot of infrastructure that's already in place that we're not really starting from scratch with electric, because most docks have power for you to charge at. And, you know, both of our boats have kind of taken into consideration what's currently available and what might be available in the future. So being able to work off of the DC quick chargers that are coming in, there's one at Clipper, there's one down in Redwood City, but also on kind of the previous infrastructure as well. And I think one of the other things that people have to get used to is it's such a different experience, especially with hydrofoils. You know, electric in general, it's not necessarily as loud. You know, you're going to have different processes for how you might be out on the water boating and how you're going to, you know, charge instead of fill up. And so it's getting people used to just something that's new in a lot of ways.
So, Mike, you mentioned you retrofitted a very old boat. You know, I guess the golden age of boating was, you know, in the 20s. I mean, there were electric boats many, you know, more than a century ago. Are any of those old electric boats still running? Or how long would an electric motor go with one of these boats?
The reality is there are motors built by the Edison company that are still absolutely functional. The efficiencies of those motors are probably 90% the efficiency of a vault motor that we built today. Now they're a lot heavier, they're a lot harder to maintain maybe, but the fact of the matter is the electricity, because of the nature of it, it's natural torque, i.e. it rotates, as opposed to internal combustion engine going up and down. Has one moving part in most cases. The efficiency of it and the reliability of it and the longevity of it is remarkable. I don't know what the oldest boats are, but I do know that there's a number of Elco boats out there that are probably close to 80 years old that have motors that still probably work. The only reason they wouldn't is because the motor would destroy them, sinking the motor or doing something wrong with it. But the reality is electric is so much simpler than diesel. If it weren't, there wouldn't be so many electrical appliances at home and so few diesels.
Interesting. Well, so if you have any questions, by the way, please feel free to ask. Okay, Paul Kennard. We get a microphone over to you?
I got over here.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
We'll start there and then we'll get to you.
Hello. I have a question. Is there any, you said how many people? 10 people can fit in? 8 to 10?
So on our boat, it's somewhere around 8 to 10 people, and it depends. We're an airplane, so it's all about how much weight you can pick up. So if your fridge is full of drinks and you have snacks for you and all your friends, it's closer to 8 people. If your fridge is a little emptier, then you can kind of have 10 people.
Well, my follow-up to that is, do you have to be in any sort of location?
So
or the captain is in a certain location, or is anyone... Because in a plane, you do have to be in a certain... to weight it correctly. So do you have to do the same thing for the boat?
So I'll answer for Navier, and then Veronica can say. So on our boat, our foils are at the extremities of the boat. So you have one as far forward as you can, and then 2 as far back. So we don't really care where you are within that. So awesome. The strongest, or the most stable shape or platform is three legs of a stool. So the boat inherently is very stable, and so we can have I mean, you can only fit probably 4 or 5 people up in the bow, but you can have your weight forward or back, and it really doesn't affect the
And you
performance.
haven't had any sort of issues where when you're testing it,
We actually test everything to extremes.
Yeah,
so
I'm sure you do.
We put
I'm sure you do.
the same way we went out when it was 50-mile-an-hour winds. We put everybody in the front, put everybody in the back.
Yeah.
Have everybody, we'll go out with 5 engineers and jump up and down as many times as we can and see if it does anything.
And do you weigh the people? Because I have pilot friends that literally weigh people before they get in the plane. In
We
little
make
planes,
estimates.
like single engine. What?
We make estimates. I wouldn't say that we.
I know it's harsh.
We don't have a scale on the dock.
Okay.
So when we get the mic over there, I'm going to ask you a question. We were talking about energy density and how, storing electricity in batteries, how the difficulties of that and the efficiency of that. How do you work on solving those issues?
In terms of the battery storage?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we use lithium-ion NMC batteries. I imagine it's similar. And
Exactly.
so the way to think about it is that our boat gets around 30 miles per gallon, and that it has the equivalent, there's no gas in the boat, but it has the energy equivalent density of about 2 gallons of gas. And so that's about the same as what a car, so it's 85 to 114 kilowatts, which is roughly what a long-range kind of standard EV car would have, or half the battery capacity of a Rivian or a Cybertruck for comparison. And so we need very little energy, and the reason for that is we only use about 40 horsepower. So it takes about 40 horsepower to get a 30-foot boat going about 22 knots. Yeah. And the reason for that is foils. So without foils, you need the same amount of horsepower as a traditional boat, and then all of a sudden you're kind of back to square one, where you're in the cycle of diminishing returns, where you need more battery to get your boat farther, and then your boat weighs more, and then you need more battery for the more weight, and you kind of start to spiral out where you haven't left the dock. So that's a long answer to your question about what we do with battery.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I'll jump in really quickly,
Yes.
but so our boat is a little bit smaller, a little bit of a smaller battery. We actually use the Polestar battery, so the car company based in Sweden. It's a 69 kilowatt hour, and we get that 57 nautical miles off of that 69 kilowatt hour. So for us, efficiency is really very, very key. We just have that one battery, but it's, on the water at 5 knots, you're doing about the same efficiency as you are off the water at 22. So you're getting about 1.2 kilowatt hours per nautical mile. And that really allows you to have kind of the range that we're talking about. And you can see sort of that difference, but you're increasing your speed while maintaining, what you would have at a low speed on the water.
Thank you. Paul?
Well, I've spent a lot of my career explaining how inefficient planing hulls are, especially when I worked for Arneson Marine, doing a lot of work with high-speed powerboats. And I like to use the biological analogy. There is no creature on Earth that moves fast on the water surface with a planing hull, except maybe a water bird that's trying to slow down after it lands. Everything is either wing and ground effect or displacement. And I wonder if the same logic actually applies to subsurface foils, because a foil working in a dense medium becomes less efficient as it gets close to the thin medium, meaning the surface of the water. An airfoil in the thin medium becomes more efficient when it gets close to the dense medium, meaning the water surface. So I can't think of any biological evolved solution which uses subsurface foils. That suggests that this is a transitional technology, and eventually we'll go to wing and ground effect for the most efficient water surface vehicles. Are any of you thinking along those lines? And are there solutions coming up to the control problems with wing and ground effect as a more efficient solution to the problems you're solving?
I'm happy to dive into this one.
Yeah.
So wing and ground is a fantastic. First of all, appreciate the question and the background, and I agree with pretty much everything you said. So one aspect of it is the foil does get closer to the water surface. You are correct in that one phenomenon can happen, which is the surface of water has a lot of bubbles and a lot of turbidity in it, versus down lower you have more clean water. So you're looking for clean molecules, air or water molecules in this case, to pass over the foil to create that lift. So if you are riding really close to the edge, you will get a little kind of vibration similar to an airplane in turbulence. So that's kind of one aspect of it. There's a company that does wing and ground effect, sea gliders they call them. The short answer to your question, and we can have a longer conversation about it later, is regulation is what's going to kill that. In that the second you leave the water surface, you're in FAA land, and the second you're in the water, you're in U.S. Coast Guard land. And FAA is going to take you 20, 30 years to be able to do anything that you really want to do. Now, the caveat to that is there is a small regulatory loophole for sea gliders, or wing in ground vehicles, that was built before any wing ground vehicles really existed, so nobody's really cared about it for a long time. But now there's companies that are trying to do that. I see no world where you're going to be able to fly a 100-foot wingspan aircraft at 100 miles per hour, 5 feet off the water surface in San Francisco Bay with sailboat races happening. So I think there's a practical limitation to where it can exist. I think in the Middle East, where they're really diving in, Neom, for example, is a big build in Saudi Arabia. I think there's absolutely going to be sea gliders out there that are doing exactly what you're saying. But I think there's practical limitations when FAA is involved, which is the U.S. regulatory authority for the air. It's going to be very difficult. So the long answer to your question is, yes, that is the most efficient way, but practical regulatory limitations are going to hold that back for a long time, and it'll only work in certain runs that are not over heavily trafficked water.
I saw another hand over here.
Anything to add?
No, you took it all.
Please, go ahead.
He had it.
So what is the cost of these things? And is it correct to say you're running about 1 kilowatt hour per mile, approximately, what you were saying, or 1.2 kilowatt hour per nautical mile is what you said?
Yeah, we run about 1.2 to 1.5, kind of dependent a little bit on your sea state and your weight on the boat and things like that, wind. And then for us, our 28-foot runs about $395,000. That includes all the shipping and import, so that's delivery wherever you want it in the U.S. But that's kind of where we're at. And then our P12, which is that ferry, is at about 2.1, 2.2.
So are you looking, both of you, are you looking to first go for the big guys commercialize, or are you looking for everybody here at the yacht club to get one?
Yeah. I mean, on our end, at least, yeah, both. That would be the short answer. We started with leisure, and so that's what's really gotten us into the market and kind of, in people's minds. So leisure right now is probably about 70% of our business. We just started producing that P12 model, which is our first Pro Series. So we're about 3 in production. And that first one's going to go in a public transit trial with the city of Stockholm. We've got one headed for public transit in New Zealand. And then we've got some that will hopefully end up in the Middle East and eventually here in the Bay or in the Americas in general. But as things progress, definitely the Pro Series side of things will kind of take more of the pie, I would say. So we'd probably end up with about 60% on the professional side and 40% someone just wants a boat. But I'm not sure what, yeah.
We're effectively similar in terms of paths. So we're younger as a company in that our first production boat is going to be delivered in about 6 weeks to customers. They'll quickly ramp up to have a serious production line. We're delivering about 2 boats per month right now after that first customer boat, which will be end of July. And so that'll be our series. We'll go to two boats per month, and then we'll go to a boat per week into next year. And then we also are building, I gave a teaser at the end there, but we also are building a larger passenger boat, which will be a similar 30-passenger vessel. And we're actually looking to build even bigger, as well as look at really the mass production or mass transit market. When it comes to it, our boats start at $550,000 for the cabin boat, which is on the dock. You're welcome to go see it and give it a try today. It's a fully enclosed cabin boat. We do have a hardtop and an open boat, and the open boat starts at $375,000, and the hardtop starts at $450,000.
Okay.
I had a question. I wondered what speed it takes to get onto a foil and what speed it takes to maintain staying on a foil.
Yeah, so our boat, it's 16 knots, and that's plus minus 1 or 2. If you have a full boat, it could be at 18 knots, but it's basically where you create lift there. So somewhere between 6 to 18 knots is takeoff speed, and then you can really stay there if you want to kind of be in what we call slow flight in the aviation world, where you're right on stall speed, but 20 to 22 knots is our sweet spot for cruising speed. It's where everything's really stable and smooth. And then we limit our boat right now to 30 knots. We regulate it for customers, but we open it up to some customers to 35 knots.
So, Mike, what about the maintenance issues to do with electric motors on boats and, longevity issues? And, yeah, we're going to share mics.
Maintenance
pull
issues
that
for...
up. It'd be easier. Or maybe not. There you go.
Thank you. Maintenance is basically something people forget about. Every diesel boat that I've ever been on, the owners basically have forgotten about diesel maintenance. Well, they pretty much forget about electric maintenance too. That's just the nature of a sailor. We want to sail. We don't want to do oil changes. We don't want to do anything like that. Maintenance on electric boats is basically keeping them clean. I tell people that they should. The maintenance on our small motors is once a year put a little grease in the thrust bearings, and maybe check your terminals, make sure that they're clean and dry, and that's it. There's really not. I don't think there's any
How long
maintenance
do
at
they
all.
last compared to a diesel engine?
Well, we've been building them for about 12 years now, and the only way to kill one of our motors so far has been to electrocute it with lightning strike. They pretty much, the other characteristic about building these systems are they're modular. You can literally get an electric strike, lightning strike, and call us up, tell us what happened, and we will basically provide the components that are broken and get you right back on the water. That truly is the only thing that actually kills an electric boat. There's minor maintenance.
Interesting. So, and how long do they last compared to a diesel? And then we'll get to.
Well, again, there we have the question. We've been doing it for 12 years now, and they're basically in perfect condition. None of them have needed to have any adjustments and maintenance to them other than annual maintenance.
Kimball.
Yeah, I'm curious about underwater stuff. If I were in San Diego, say, I would want to know how am I going to clear kelp off these underwater appendages. And also, before you respond to that, I want to share with you in regard to hydrofoil technology and how it works in seas. I've been talking to the crazy Frenchman who just raced around the world in 100-foot foiling trimarans. Charles Cordelier made it around in 50 days solo, 100-foot trimaran. 6 of them started, 5 of them finished. 1 hit some stuff, had to limp in. But all the guys who sailed the boats agree it's more comfortable, it's safer. They love being on the foils compared to the bad old days because now they don't think they're going to capsize. So, underwater stuff.
Yeah, I mean, for us, there's kind of a couple things when thinking about catching things, hitting things underwater in general. The first is obviously with foils, you do have a draft. So like you do have stuff in the water. Ours are at about 5 feet when they're fully extended. When you're foiling, it's about 2 feet, 3 feet in the water. There's a couple things that can happen. You know, if you're hitting kelp and whatnot, some of it you're just going to blast through no problem. If it gets stuck on the foils, you can normally like feel it, or you'll see in your consumption that you might be using just a little bit more. If you just back up, like land back up and whatnot, most of the time it comes off. But then we've also taken into consideration like hitting logs or rocks or things like that. So the foils are built with a breaking point. So the idea is that if you were to hit something big enough where you would break the foil, those will break off, protecting the hull and the passengers. And then that's just a replacement that you would have to do. But that's kind of, that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you. Yes.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I have a concern about the range that you talked about. What'd you say, 57 miles?
Ours is 57. I believe
We're at 75 nautical.
is
So
a-
86 nautical, or we're 86 regular miles, 75 nautical miles. So 75 and 56.
And I'm assuming that the measurement of that is calculated like they do with the electric cars, and that's in ideal conditions without any other drag on the motors, such as rough seas or an adverse wind or something like that. So I doubt that you're really planning to actually do 60, 70 miles on one charge. So that's fine if you want to go around the bay and stop at Angel Island for a picnic. But if you're going to go anywhere, and let's say you want to go down the coast, well, maybe you could make it to Monterey. I'm not even sure that either of those distances would make it to Monterey. But let's say you stopped at Half Moon Bay or you made it to Monterey. Now, how long is it going to take to, assuming there's not a quick charger there, you're going to pull into Monterey and plug into the city dock there. How long does it take to recharge the battery using a basic 110 circuit?
Yeah, I believe both of our boats are fairly similar as far as charging time. So 0 to 100%, it takes us about 6 hours, 5.5, 6 hours. I believe you guys are like 6 to 8.
And just to clarify, you're saying off of 110, which is actually going to double that time. So we're talking 220 rates. Which is what standard shore power is. I mean, 110 is literally the wall outlet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's going to take you a very long time to do that. But almost all marinas that have any big boat, like all the big shore power cables, those are typically 220, 30 amp or 50 amp.
50, yeah.
And so we're talking the 6 to 8 hour range is the 30 to 50 amp 220. Off of 110, it's going to take you a really long time to charge.
Yeah.
So even if you recharge in Monterey, you're not going to have, I don't know where I don't know that you can go further south to make it all the way to Santa Barbara.
So just to jump in to clarify, and feel free to jump in here, is that these are day boats, these are bay boats, these are cruiser boats. If your goal as a boater is to go way out the gate and run down the coast, I would say hydrofoil boats in their current state are not the boat for you.
Yeah.
I think it's quite as simple as that. They're great if you want to go 3 or 4 hours and you want to cruise around the bay. You live in San Diego, somebody mentioned, and you want to hang out in Mission Bay. Perfect boat for that. It's going to cost you almost nothing to go anywhere. You're going to be able to stay 3 or 4 hours on foil and go around and have lunch and hang out with your friends. If you're looking to go down the coast and run long distances, then diesels are the best option.
Yeah.
One last question. Although the motor components can last forever, as this gentleman said, what about replacing the battery packs? I know that at least with the early point, the EVs and the cars, you had to replace the batteries after 7 years or something like that. I don't even know what the current status of that is, but how long do those the battery packs, are they expected to last?
Yeah, so our Polestar battery pack is, Polestar rates theirs for about 12 to, I believe, 14 years of use. And that's on a car, so that's being used very, very consistently. So ours are rated for at least that, if not a bit longer. But we'll see battery technology kind of continue to get better and better. So there is a possibility that you could also in the future retrofit something that is of a better battery into these boats.
Tom Amon has a question. We're about to wrap up. Go ahead, Tom. Oh, you'll to the gentleman. I see. Well, go ahead, gentlemen.
Out in the ocean,
Closer.
Out in the ocean, how do your boats handle? And additionally, what are your thoughts on hybrid boats to make longer ranges where you might have a generator that could power an electric motor?
Yeah. I mean, I'll speak to mine, and I'm sure Sam can speak to his, too. And then jump in with some of that as well. So yeah, different types of waves, the boat's going to react differently. So with swells, the boat is trained basically to kind of follow the swell to some degree. So the main goal of our boat is keep the foils in the water. So there are sensors around the outside of the boat that are actively taking information like wave height, wave mapping, that sort of thing. That's going through a flight control software that we've created in-house, and that's pushing manual adjustments to those foils. So both of our boats make many foil adjustments a second to basically keep you stable. There is a limit. So at some point, you're going to have moments where, your hull is hitting the top of a wave or something like that. You can punch through some of that just fine, but there will be a point in time where maybe it's more efficient or a better ride to kind of take it off of the foils.
And Mike, do you have any comments about the possibility of hybrid?
In the cruising world, that's mostly what people do. First of all, by definition, a sailboat is a hybrid. It's electric. It's solar powered. The sail is the primary. The motor is auxiliary. And it's interesting. The average battery that we put on a sailboat, it also has about the equivalent of about 1.5 gallons of fuel. I find that fascinating. I look at the 3 types of sailors: day sailor, bay sailor. Okay, if you put a diesel on a boat that doesn't leave this bay, I don't understand why you would do that, because there's no place in this bay you can get to and get back with current technology for less and cleaner and quieter. If you're going to be going up and down the coast, that's a problem. You're going to have to be hybrid, because there's always going to be a current. One direction, there's always going to be a current or prevailing winds against you, so you're going to be having to fight that. So the hybrid is good. The ability to have let's say a 20 kilowatt generator, a 20 kilowatt motor driving the boat to haul speed. Typically a 7-8 kilowatt generator would get that boat to about 65% of haul speed. That's a good cruising speed. Now, if you're going to go ahead and cross an ocean, the reality is you'd be foolish to put a diesel in, because there's no more efficient way to cross an ocean with a sailboat than with electric. Because the moment you hit the trade winds, you're living off the power you're generating by that motor, because it is also by definition a generator. So primary is sail, therefore that primary sail can generate power to you in addition to solar. The average battery pack that would be put into a cruising ocean-going boat would provide maybe 36 to 48 hours of low speed, 2.5 knot range. That gives you forward motion, it gives you control, it gives you a little bit of comfort on the boat. But at that point, then you decide as the sailor, whether or not you want to fire up your generator and then push on at a more appropriate cruising range. But there are very few boats that can drive a diesel that can drive you across an ocean. There's some trawlers can, but and the reality is the problem we have in sailboats is for the coastal cruiser, not the day sailor, not the racer, and not the ocean cruiser. It's the up and down the coast cruiser.
Thank you, Mike. Tom Amon?
Thank you, Kathy. Thanks, lady and gentlemen. This is very interesting, very informative. Thank you very much. I have a 3-part, if I may, Madam Chair. May I ask a 3-part
You may.
question? First part is, do any of you have a demonstration boat here now?
We're glad you asked that question.
I have one on the dock.
That was a softball.
And the second question is, will any of you have, if not, or even if you do, will you have a demonstration boat by September of this year here in the Bay?
How about today?
And third question is, would you like to come to St. Francis Yacht Club's 67th annual stag cruise, which is the last weekend in September? And other than the chair being cretonic, I hear it's really going to be good.
Now.
Would you like to come give a demonstration to the 500 gentlemen assembled at this year's stag cruise? Thank you.
As one of the people that will be at Stag Cruise, it probably is an
Sam's
easy
a
thing to
member.
happen.
You can't keep him away.
Walt,
It is a Stag Cruise, but
I mean, we have a boat here in the Bay based out of Sausalito the majority of the time, so we're always doing demos, we're always around. We've been here at the club before, we've hosted a couple events here. So yes, happy to be anywhere and everywhere for people to see the boat.
We have about 250 boats in California. There's about 70 in the Bay. We've got two of our clients here today with Catalina 36 that was converted in 2019, and Spitzgarter, built in 1939. That was converted in 2021. I estimate there's about 300 electric boats in San Francisco Bay. There's not a marina you can go to that does not have an electric boat. I pretty much guarantee that.
That's great. We have a question here? Yeah. You need to get a microphone. Oh, I'm sorry. You go first and then we'll... Yeah.
So with electric cars, there's an inconvenience of finding the right charger because there's different ports and outlets. Will that be the same inconvenience with these boats?
So we've adopted the... so yes, it's an annoyance right now. I'd say the EV industry has done a good job at all moving towards the North America charging standard, previously known as a Tesla plug. And so we have adopted that on the boats. Right now it's CCS combo, I think, on most boats with an adapter easily. So I'd say that's been a real troublesome point in the EV industry, in the car industry, that's transitioned now to a universal port, no different than a wall plug everywhere in the United States. And the EV fast charging industry is doing that too on the water, at least from our perspective, and I imagine the same.
For the sailboat market, that's irrelevant because the 30 or 50 amp circuit is more than adequate to recharge the boats. Usually takes a day sail, probably an hour. If you bring the battery down, 4 to 6 hours, just off of the standard plugs.
Yeah. Impressive.
Yeah, and I mean, ours, like he was kind of saying, at least, you could pretty much plug it into a wall. So we have all sorts of basically adapters. So you can really use whatever is at your availability. But like he was saying, most places have 30 and 50. And then most people that are going into the DC quick charging are going towards that Tesla charger. And so we've kind of made sure you can adopt whatever's around.
Your question?
Yeah, 2 quick questions. I was sailing friends Catalina 35 from Manila across the South China Sea to Hong Kong. Halfway across, we ran into just the doldrums, fired up the diesel engine. The batteries caught on fire and burned up. We were floating out there, trying to radio for help, but there's not much traffic in the South China Sea, well, pirates. But
the Chinese are there. The Chinese are there.
Fire on your batteries, number one question, the fires. But in the end, being green, what do you do to recycle dead batteries? I mean, those are pretty nasty chemicals. So what's the program on that? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be an issue across industry with anything that's an electric battery. Slowly but surely, they've come up with more and more ways to potentially recycle lithium-ion batteries. We don't yet have like a program or anything like that where you could bring your battery back to us. But it is a concern, and it is something people are thinking about in the industry, in the car industry, in boating, all of that, because it is a big thing that you don't necessarily want to just put in the ground. So yeah, I don't know if you guys have a way to go about that, but it's something that we're kind of keeping our eye on. For us, it's going to be sort of whatever the car industry goes towards, and they're kind of figuring out that problem for us, and then we get to kind of piggyback off of them.
We're about to wrap up. Do you have any questions for one another?
I think we all know each other pretty well.
Yeah, I guess so. Do you have any more questions?
I'm looking for a ride.
Sitting
so
at the
are
dock.
we.
I guess we are.
Okay.
Can you retract the foils, and is it a simple push button and then roll to try to nothing sticking out the bottom?
Yeah. So the foils for both of our boats are, I believe, are retractable into the hull. Yep. So you can beach the boat, actually put it onto a trailer. Yeah. And the boat actually weighs our boat weighs about 5,000 pounds, which is super light. So like a regular F-150 pickup truck can tow it no problem.
Yeah, we're 3,800, so very light.
All right. Any closing thoughts from any of the engineers that might be having?
Engineering questions, including wing and ground, if anybody wants to. Later, we do have some free hats over there if anybody wants one, as well as boat rides from the dock. Yep. Chris and Reed over here will be on the dock with the boat, so coordinate with them if you want to go out.
So what we're going to do now is I'm going to bring Michael Caholen, who's a St. Francis Yacht Club member and a member of the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon Committee. and you are going to organize this little trip right now to the dock. Michael, grab a mic.
Thank you for the question over there about are we going to display and get rides on these today. That we do have that ability. Thank you to Sam. But I would just invite all of us who would like, I can escort us down to the docks. And I'd like to acknowledge two people that Mike mentioned. Diane Walton is here, and she has brought Gerda, her Spitzgatter 1939 boat from Denmark, which is interesting because it never had a motor, but they've added an electric motor, which I thought was a clever idea too. And then also Keith Krajcek, if I've got that right, has brought Luna, his Catalina 36, which has been repurposed, regenerated with an electric motor, as Mike mentioned, and the good work we can see that Electric Yacht is doing on boats that had no engines or a diesel engine before. So, Sam, you mentioned rides might be available. These are the two gentlemen. Probably see them up here now to organize that. I know I'd love to get on one if it's possible, but the rest of us can meet out in the lobby and make our way to the docks if you're interested. Wonderful presentation from all of you.
And I'll also add quickly that if there are a lot of people who want to go out, we can see about organizing a rib as well to go next to it. It's actually quite a boring experience to be in the boat. It's much cooler to watch it from the outside. So I say that very seriously. I always offer everybody want to ride in or see it next to it. Everybody always says they want to go in it. It's a wrong decision.
So with that, we will convene. We will now adjourn the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. Thank you for joining us.
This has been a presentation of the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon.